Hello, everyone. And although this story sounds almost unreal, what you are about to hear actually happened. This is not a legend, not a wartime myth, but a very real episode from the aftermath of the First World War. Today, we are talking about U-118, a massive German submarine that became famous not for its victories at sea, but for the way it ended its journey, stranded on a British beach, in full view of shocked civilians. U-118 was a Type UE-2 mine-laying submarine, one of the largest Germany had built during the war. She entered service in May 1918, at a time when the German Navy was already fighting a losing battle beneath the waves. Despite her impressive size and range, U-118's combat career was short and relatively modest. Only months after becoming operational, she managed to sink two Allied vessels, the British steamship Wellington and later the tanker Arca. These would be her only confirmed successes. With Germany's defeat and the armistice signed, U-118 never returned to combat. Instead, like many other surviving U-boats, she was surrendered to the Allies and handed over to British control in early 1919 at Harwich. Her fate seemed straightforward. She was to be towed to Brest, France, where captured German submarines were being inspected and scrapped. But the sea had other plans. In the early hours of April 15, 1919, a powerful storm swept across the English Channel. As U-118 was being towed across rough waters, the towing cable suddenly snapped. The massive submarine, now helpless, was at the mercy of wind and waves. Before anyone could react, the currents pushed the steel giant toward the English coast and straight onto the beach at Hastings, directly in front of the Queen's Hotel. When morning came, the sight was astonishing. A submarine nearly 82 meters long, weighing hundreds of tons, lay stranded on the sand like some mechanical sea monster. Tourists and locals gathered in disbelief. For many civilians, this was the first time they had ever seen a real German U-boat. Not in newspapers, not in propaganda, but right in front of them. At first, the British authorities attempted to refloat the submarine using tractors and heavy equipment, but the effort failed. U-118 was simply too large, too deeply embedded in the sand. With no immediate solution, the Admiralty made a practical decision. If the submarine could not be removed, it might as well be used. And so, U-118 became a tourist attraction. Visitors traveled to Hastings from all over the country to photograph the submarine and even climb onto her deck. For a small fee, civilians were allowed to get closer to this former weapon of war. The money collected, around £300, was donated to funds supporting British soldiers returning from the front. Two coastguard officers, William Hurd and Charles Moore, were assigned to guide VIP visitors inside the submarine. They led tours through the cramped interior, explaining its mechanisms and life aboard a German U-boat. But within weeks, both men fell seriously ill, suffering from severe internal pain. Doctors initially suspected food poisoning caused by rotting supplies left inside the vessel. Both men died soon after, Moore in late 1919, Hurd in early 1920. Only later did investigators reach a disturbing conclusion. The likely cause was toxic gas released by damaged battery systems inside the submarine. As a result, all internal tours were immediately banned. U-118 was no longer just a curiosity. She had become dangerous. Eventually, the submarine was sold for scrap, and by the end of 1919, dismantling began directly on the beach. Most of her hull was removed, but even today, it is believed that parts of the keel may still lie buried beneath the sands of Hastings, hidden remnants of a forgotten war. U-118 remains the most famous example of a German submarine cast ashore. But she was not the only one. Just a few years later, U-130 would meet a similar fate after breaking free from her tow during another storm. The story of U-118 is not about victory or defeat in battle. It is about the strange afterlife of war machines, about how instruments of destruction can become public spectacles, and how even after the guns fall silent, war continues to leave its mark, sometimes in the most unexpected places. A steel giant, defeated not by enemy fire, but by the sea itself.